Freedom of speech is a tool often used by opposition members, journalists, or even ordinary citizens. Everyone uses it for their own purposes. Some like to express their opinions, some like to argue. And someone criticizes. Anyway, freedom of speech is a sign of democracy and a free world. The Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi is a vivid example of the consequences that criticism can bring. Especially if you express your opinion in a country where democracy is empty words. Usually, in such authoritarian countries, other tools are found to silence the free voice. And, unfortunately, in the case of Khashoggi, this is what happened. It all started in 2015, when the journalist mercilessly criticized the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman.
I still see him as a reformer, but the problem is that his powerful hands are strangling everything. He stifles media and public discourse, preventing discussion of critical issues. You can't do that.
Khashoggi worked for various Saudi publications, but the theme of his work has always been the same: criticism of the prince and US President Donald Trump. If the head of the White House was criticized for the wars the US got involved in and the international policies of the 45th president, the prince faced a storm of discontent over the persecution of opposition figures, activists, and basically anyone who tried to cross the royal family. However, no one prevented him from writing. But only until 2016. It was at that time that Khashoggi became famous as the main critic of the royal family. His articles, public appearances, and interviews garnered international attention. Therefore, he was completely banned from journalism in the country. Otherwise, imprisonment. The prince's people promised to turn his life into hell.
Was he threatened? Yes, even on Twitter, but it didn't scare him at all. The only thing he was afraid of, as he said, was to go to some third world country where the Saudis could remove him or put him on a private jet and kidnap him.
Ban on journalistic activities pushed Khashoggi to leave Saudi Arabia in 2017 and settle in the United States. He thought the special services there wouldn't get him. That's what happened. Jamal continued to write, seeking a publication for his column. In the United States, even despite criticism of Donald Trump and his political activities, freedom of speech was still better than at home. In 2017, Mohammed bin Salman became head of the country's anti-corruption committee. And while he was terrorizing the richest people in Saudi Arabia, Khashoggi wrote about it from America and told the whole world that the prince's regime was mired in corruption, lies, and violence against its own people.
A few months after his arrival in the US, Jamal received constant calls from people close to the prince urging him to return to Saudi Arabia. One of them was Saud al-Qahtani, a very tough man. Some people equate him with Rasputin. After a call with Qahtani, the journalist stated he wouldn't return home. He knew that he could be killed there.
Later, a job at the Washington Post. The publication gave the journalist a column, and the media's status helped the world hear Khashoggi. More headlines came out about the activities and life of the Saudi prince. And that's not even mentioning criticism of the royal family. But they couldn't just deal with the journalist that easily. Saudi intelligence couldn't get him in the US. All that was left was to harass him with calls or on social media. Khashoggi also understood that after his activities, it would be possible to return to his homeland, except when the monarchy in the kingdom fell. Otherwise, he will be killed. Nevertheless, the work at the Washington Post was going well. He became quite famous in journalistic circles.
In Saudi Arabia, Jamal had a long career. He often communicated with the kingdom's political elite. The only time I spoke to Khashoggi was for work. I wanted to get a government comment. So Khashoggi acted as a journalist, spokesperson, and reliable source on the Saudi Arabian government.
Jamal knew the Saudi regime very well. He was involved, serving in embassies and editing the local publication. Khashoggi knew a lot through his journalistic profession.
In addition to attending various interviews, giving public talks and lectures about the royal family's regime, Jamal also tried to help those targeted by the Saudi prince's attack dogs. Public figures, political activists, critics of the regime, wherever they were, everyone faced threats of reprisals. And Khashoggi himself too. When special forces couldn't appease him with a position or job, they straighted openly threaten him. The fact that Jamal would die soon was obvious. Everything else was a matter of time, place and method of murder.
In the summer of 2018, many activists realized that they were being intimidated online and on social networks. Khashoggi was a key target. That's how I decided to study attacks on activists. I created special software that could track all this. I showed my development to Jamal. Interested, he began to help us. He gave $5,000 from his own pocket to finance the project.
Jamal Khashoggi's murder, one could say, started because of the story involving this woman. Hatice Cengiz. The Saudi journalist was already married and had sons, but he got divorced. He met Cengiz during an interview. The spark grew into something more, and it led to marriage. But to marry, he needed to confirm his previous divorce. And it was this event that became the point of no return in Khashoggi's life. From America, the journalist and bride traveled to Turkey to learn about wedding planning.
We visited the municipal office to inquire about marriage document requirements. We were told that a special certificate was required to confirm that each of us was single. It's essential. And to get that certificate, we had to go to the Saudi embassy.
Khashoggi suspected that a visit to the Saudi embassy in Turkey could be fatal for him. But no. After 45 minutes, he learned the wedding was fine, and divorce papers would be ready in days. There were no signs of trouble. It seemed that the registration procedure was successful, and in a few days Jamal would start a new life with his new wife. They planned to live and start a family in Turkey. While Khashoggi planned his future, the Saudi ambassador informed the prince and local intelligence that the journalist was on his hook and would return to the embassy soon. The chance to detain an enemy of the royal family could not be missed.
Saudi intelligence services have evolved significantly over the past 2 decades, partly due to changes in the royal family's structure. 3 kings ruled the country over 20 years. Everyone had their own methods. Previously, the special services were not so cruel.
In Riyadh, they understood perfectly well, there was only one chance to catch and talk to Khashoggi, there might not be another. So they began to prepare a plan to kill the journalist. If researchers and investigators are to be believed, there were only 2 options: either force Jamal to return to Saudi Arabia and stop criticizing the prince, or kill him on the spot. An embassy is a completely secret place, and everything that happens there stays within its walls. At least that's what the special forces believed. 15 people were sent to eliminate Khashoggi, including 3 key figures: Mustafa al-Madani, Jamal Khashoggi's body double, Salah al-Tubaigi, a forensic expert, and Mahmutreb, the head of the entire operation. The rest of the team was for emergencies.
Assassins claim to be tourists, but tourists don't usually visit the embassy for hours and then go to the airport. First they went to the hotel, then to the city center, where they bought suitcases, then to the embassy, then again to the hotel and on the plane.
We will tell you what the suitcases were for. Meanwhile, on October 2, 2018, Day X arrived. Jamal Khashoggi came to the embassy. They called him, saying the documents were ready for signature and pickup. This video shows how the journalist leaves his phone to the bride and enters the embassy. This is the last video in which he is seen alive. Jamal didn't go out for several hours. Initially, all seemed normal, as he had previously spent 45 minutes in the ambassador's office. Cengiz thought that the registration procedure could take longer, and therefore she was not worried. But when he didn't show up for the 3rd and 4th hour, panic set in, along with the realization that perhaps her fiancé might never come out.
I peered at all the cars that left the embassy and tried to understand what was happening. I never thought that this could happen. I told the entrance I was waiting for Jamal Khashoggi, but they claimed no knowledge of him and said he wasn't there. There was no one inside. After 5 hours of waiting, I started calling Jamal's friends and asking for help.
It is interesting how the group of killers arrived. A few hours earlier, before Jamal entered the diplomatic building, private planes from different cities arrived at Turkey's Ataturk airport on 2 different flights. 15 people gathered at the embassy also at different times. They drove in 2 different cars with diplomatic license plates. One car was hidden in a covered garage, out of range of surveillance cameras, so no one could see who exited or what they carried. As it turns out later, these were suitcases that will probably later be used to pack Khashoggi's dismembered body.
Saudi's initial planning was flawed. They were overly confident, thinking Turkey was an easy country, but we are the largest and strongest country in the region. Our law enforcement agencies are trained and active enough to counteract everything.
5 hours after the journalist's disappearance, murder wasn't considered. Friends, the fiancé, and local journalists all admitted the possibility that Khashoggi was simply kidnapped and secretly taken to Saudi Arabia on a private plane. And the more time elapsed from his visit to the embassy, the more unlikely the version of the kidnapping seemed. Conjectures about the opposition journalist's murder emerged on October 3, the day after his disappearance. Saudi Arabia's position: we have no business here. The embassy's position: he is not there inside. And the cameras did record how Khashoggi left the diplomatic post. The question arose, where is he then?
If his head was severed and he was removed from Turkey, it's quite possible. Some detachment members had diplomatic passports. First of all, their bags are not checked at airports. Secondly, they could easily stuff other parts of his body into the diplomatic suitcases.
The first to talk about dismemberment were BBC journalists. Other global publications like The Washington Post and The Guardian also covered the topic. Videos from surveillance cameras appeared on the network, which show how special forces either take out or bring huge bags and suitcases to the embassy. And the man who actually left the building, Mustafa al-Madani, was Jamal Khashoggi's body double. Though dressed identically to the journalist, his shoes betrayed him. Jamal went in wearing boots, but the double came out in sneakers. It became clear then, he was not kidnapped, not taken away, but killed. It remained to find the body and prove the involvement of Saudi Arabia and Prince Mohammed bin Salman, in particular. After all, the group of killers were people close to him. Operations head, Mahmutreb, traveled around the world with the prince, and his face appears in almost all of the Saudi prince's official meetings.
Some believe that the remains of the body were dissolved in acid. Others claim that he was dismembered and taken to 3 countries. The head went to those who ordered the killing.
When Khashoggi entered the embassy, he went to the 2nd floor of the ambassador's office. A group of killers and a diplomatic employee were already waiting for him. On the table in front of him were surgical instruments. And then Jamal realized that he would not leave the walls of this building. He was injected with an unknown drug and strangled. The journalist was stripped, except for his shoes. Soon after, a double exited the diplomatic mission's back door while Khashoggi was dismembered in the ambassador's office. The whole operation took only an hour and a half.
First they tied him up, then someone pulled a bag over his head. He was still trying to resist. They tried to gag him, but he kept shouting due to his asthma. All this is in the ambassador's office. He resisted 7 minutes, until he had no more strength.
A group of killers quickly left the embassy through the back door, went to the airport and in the same way returned to Saudi Arabia on 2 flights with a sense of accomplishment. During the Turkish investigation, Saudis confidently denied the prince's involvement. And they did not even think of touching Khashoggi, because only recently they offered him to return to his homeland and work. This was partly true. Jamal was indeed called with such offers. But surveillance video, the journalist's actions, and the corrupt royal regime formed a single puzzle. It became clear to Turkish law enforcement agencies that Jamal was personally ordered by Mohammed bin Salman.
Saudi Arabian officials and their media have launched an active propaganda campaign against Turkey. Like, the video shows Khashoggi leaving the embassy. And everything they are trying to accuse the royal family of is just fabricated evidence that Turkish intelligence is playing with.
It was not easy to prove the guilt of the Saudis. There was almost no evidence. No one was allowed inside the embassy until Turkish special services intervened. The key moment in the investigation was the tapes that the agents showed to the public. It turned out that the embassy was being bugged, and on the released tapes, the voices of Jamal, the ambassador, and the operations head, Mahmutreb, can be clearly heard. The dialogues can be heard, including pleas not to be killed. And also the sound of Salah al-Tubagi's surgical saw. And even so, the Saudis did not want to admit either involvement or guilt. Admitting one's wrongdoing means openly stating that the country's prince ordered the journalist's killing.
He immediately asked if they were going to kill him. Jamal asked if he would get an injection and was told yes. He kept asking, "How is this even possible in an embassy?" The sounds later heard on the tapes indicate that he was struggling to breathe and in pain.
Entering the embassy, he expected marriage documents but knew what was coming. The Saudi government was watching him closely.
In order to somehow force Saudi Arabia to answer for what it has done, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan ordered all available tapes to be given to experts and intelligence agencies of various countries. All unanimously confirmed that the voices coincide with the main suspects. It became clear that the prince was guilty.
We gave the tapes to the Americans, Saudis, Germans, French and British. They listened to the recordings and understand no further discussion is needed. The killers are among the 15 people who arrived at the embassy.
After a detailed analysis of the received films, Germany, Denmark, Belgium and Finland interrupted cooperation with the Saudis in almost all areas, but most of all in the military. At the same time, openly stating that no one would cooperate with the killers. Interestingly, the American CIA also found Saudi Arabia guilty. Moreover, the department officially named the Saudi prince guilty of the death of the journalist. However, the CIA statements were insufficient as Trump aligned with the royal family, attempting a cover-up.
Saudi Arabia is a formidable ally of the United States. They create millions of jobs in this country. They order equipment, and not only military. For all the time of our cooperation, they have invested $400 billion.
18 days after the murder, Saudi Arabia officially admitted that the journalist was killed in their embassy. It was useless to resist, because Turkish investigators were allowed into the embassy. They found drops of Khashoggi's blood on the walls and the fingerprints of the killers. Everything was documented and sent to the Saudis as direct evidence. Refusing to admit it would have sparked an international scandal. In fact, it happened, but not on such a potentially large scale. Nevertheless, even though the guilt was acknowledged, the prince managed to come out unscathed.
The Saudi government said that no one wanted to kill Jamal Khashoggi at first. He allegedly died from a fight he provoked. Prince Mohammed bin Salman called all the tapes published by Turkish intelligence agencies fabricated. The prince pleads guilty, admitting lack of control over the situation, but denies orchestrating the murders.
There are still rumors about Khashoggi's body. Some believe he was thrown into an embassy well. Others claim that he was actually burned. Turkish journalists managed to find a master who built a special oven just after Khashoggi first came to the embassy. He does not reveal his name and face, but assures that the stove was twice as large as usual. The power there was enough to melt the metal, and the hole was so large that you can safely put an adult there. Why do you need that stove at the embassy? It's still unclear, but one thing is certain, it was constructed according to the embassy's drawings and instructions.
From an intelligence view, it's sheer incompetence to kill someone in your own embassy.
However, the Saudis still said that they had launched their own investigation and arrested not even 15, but 18 suspects. They were awaiting trial. It turned out that 11 people were found guilty. 5 of them received death sentences. All this was just a parody of the trial. All hearings, verdicts and proceedings took place behind closed doors. To this day, even the names of those people are unknown. However, in September 2020, the 5 sentenced to death were pardoned. They will receive a 20-year prison sentence, if they receive it at all.
It's just crazy. The person who took such a step is the person who was elected head of government. I don't believe that this murder happened behind his back. He had to know about it. Power in the wrong hands can drive people to terrible acts.
Jamal Khashoggi's murder is still in the spotlight. Who's responsible remains unclear. The situation is really terrible. Each side of the conflict, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, or the United States, has its own reasons for not disclosing all the details of the tragedy. However, when the president of such a seemingly democratic country as the US tries to cover up the atrocities of the Saudi intelligence services, Khashoggi's attempts to fight for reforms or the rights of people in the Middle East become futile. After all, at such moments, dark times come for people who are fighting the same struggle as the former journalist.